Hello, everyone. Good to speak to you today. My name is Sotira Georgiou. Thank you very much for joining us. So I will give a short introduction about myself and my career so far, and then I'm going to explain a bit more about my role as a structural engineer. So this is me. My name is Sotira Georgiou. I was born and raised in Cyprus. It's an island in the Mediterranean Sea. I moved to the UK in 2010 to study my degree. I studied civil engineering at the University of Southampton, and then I went on to do a master's degree later on. After graduation, I joined a company called Rumble. It's a Danish company. I joined the company as a graduate structural engineer in the building structure team. I got a promotion as a design structural engineer. Last year, I sat my Institution of Civil Engineers Chartered Professional Review, which is a professional qualification, which I'll talk about a bit more detail. I joined the Women's Engineering Society Early Careers Board, and I'm currently working as a senior structural engineer in the same company, Rumble. So this was a very short summary about myself. About engineering in general. So there are different types of engineering. There is structural engineering, geotechnical, designing bridges, building services, infrastructure. So there's lots of variety of things you can do within engineering, and they're all helping towards creating a city where we live in, we work in, and we do lots of things. So I will focus specifically on my field, which is structural engineering today. So what do I do in my job as a structural engineer? My job is to design structures such as buildings and bridges, specifically buildings in my specific area. My job is to ensure that the buildings I design are strong enough to support the loads that are subjected to them. So these loads consist of two different types, the vertical loads and the horizontal loads. The vertical loads, as you can see in the pictures, they are made up of the weight of people, of cars, of furniture, or even snow. But horizontal loads are wind loads or even earthquakes. So my job is to design the different structural elements of a building to be strong enough to support the load from these different forces. So my job is to design the main frame of the building. So if you think a building as the body of a human, the architect, I work very closely with architects, they would tend to design the building, and they will say how tall the building is, how big it is, how many rooms there will be in the building, where the rooms will be situated. And my job as a structural engineer is to come and put together the skeleton of the building, which is the main frame, which makes up all the elements that make the building stand up and withstand all the forces that we talked about earlier. So as you can see in the picture, we will design the stability system, the vertical bracing, we will design the columns that will support all the vertical loads, and we'll design the roof elements and the floor elements such as beams and trusses. So our job is to make sure that the building stands up and withstands the loads that it is subjected to. So yeah, as you can see in this picture, lots of funky buildings all around the world, lots of different designs that the architect came up with, and our job is to ensure that we make the architect's vision a reality. So the different stages of a project. The first stage is the design stage. This is where I come in my job as a structural engineer. My job is to analyze the structure, to assess the loads that the structure will be subjected to. I will produce different structural models. First of all, the analysis model to analyze the building, to make sure I model all the different elements where I would like them to be. And also I will produce drawings that will explain later to the contractor that will come to build the building, how I have designed it, basically. So in the first picture, you can see a structural model of a building. And in the bottom left picture is where the mechanical engineer and the electrical engineer will come in, and they will decide where all the services will go, such as the mechanical and the electrical services. So we give our drawings to the contractor, which they will go on site, and the picture in the middle shows a picture of this building on site, which was constructed. And then later on, it becomes the completed building. So it's really great to see this process of a building you have designed, put together on paper, and then seeing it become a reality in the end. It's really fascinating. So what do I do in my day-to-day job? As I talked about earlier, my job is to ensure a building is stable and can support the loads that it was designed to. I do lots of structural calculations to ensure that the building can support all the loads that it will have during its design life. Lots of sketching to communicate my intent, my design intent, and my ideas to the design team, such as the architect, the mechanical engineer, the electrical engineer, the quantity surveyor, and the client as well, to make sure that the building we design is as they would like it to be. We do lots of 3D modeling, so not just two-dimensional drawings, such as the drawing you can see on the right bottom picture. We put together a 3D model to make it easier for the design team to understand how the building will look like. And we get together as part of a team to discuss how our design is and to discuss any further ideas. So a typical day for me, as I mentioned earlier, lots of design meetings. I always talk to the design team, such as the architect, the contractor, the other types of engineers working on the job. We do lots of communication between us, lots of meetings and discussions to ensure all of our designs are coordinated and at the end of the day, for the benefit of the client. Lots of sketching, lots of putting our designs on paper, calculations as well to make sure that the building is strong enough, and computer modeling, as we talked about earlier. So these are the things we do during the design stage. When the project goes on site for construction, we also go on site to review the progress of the works and answer any questions that the contractor might have on our drawings. So in terms of what kind of skills an engineer needs to have, so mathematical skills and practical skills are really important. At the end of the day, we are dealing with the numbers to ensure that all the elements we design have enough capacity to withstand the loads. But also a big part of the work is being creative and being open-minded to think about different ideas and how to make sure that the building you design can stand up and can fulfill the intention of the client and also the architect. Lots of communication. We always communicate within the internal team with my other colleagues and other engineers, but also external teams such as the architect, the contractor, the mechanical, electrical engineers, and quantity surveyors. So a lot of teamwork is involved, and it's a big team effort to create the project for the benefit of the client. You also need to be organized in terms of your time management and also people management, as you have to deal with a lot of people and making sure that you meet the deadlines and the milestones that are set in the design program, so you don't miss any deadlines. So why I enjoy engineering? There is lots of different aspects to engineering. First of all, no day is the same. Every day is completely different to the previous one. There are lots of different varieties of projects. You can design houses, you can design offices, universities, industrial buildings. So the end product is never the same as the one before, so you never get bored in engineering. You also get to work with different people and different environments. You get to transform people's lives by creating a building which would make their lives better, and they can enjoy their life better. You get to change the world and make a real difference to the people and the community. You also get opportunities to travel. So working on projects in the UK, but also abroad. So projects in the Mediterranean and in lots of different other continents as well. So lots of opportunities for traveling as well. And at the end of the day, as I mentioned earlier, you get to see the project you design become a reality. So that is very, very fascinating. Yeah, and as I said, it's really rewarding and real fun to work in engineering. So you might wonder what kind of route you will need to follow to become an engineer. So as I mentioned in my first slide, I did my A-levels. I studied maths and physics and other sciences in school. And then I went on to join university. I studied for 4 years. I did a 3-year degree and then a master's degree. And then I joined the company I'm working in at the moment. However, this is not the only route. You can go to university to study your academic qualification. But if you don't want to go to university, there is also the option to do an apprenticeship. So I have lots of people in the company I'm working in that have followed this route. So straight after school, you can join a company and you will put through a training scheme where they will teach you the job through on-the-job training. They will explain to you how to carry out the different things that we talked about earlier, do all the design calculations, do all the drawings. And some companies even sponsor you to do an academic qualification later on. So there are lots of different routes into engineering. In addition to that, you can go to university and take a year in industry. That means you will study for a couple of years and then join an employer for a year to gain industry experience. And once you get that experience, you will go back to university to continue your studies and finish your degree. So as I said, lots of different routes. But the other thing is that you have to make sure it's really important to get summer placements and work experience, whether it's paid or unpaid. I know that currently in the current situation it's a bit difficult, but grab all the opportunities that you can grab. Speak to an employer if you know anyone that works in engineering to get a few days, a few weeks, a couple of months to get this industry experience. It's really important, and it's really important for your CV as well. Also volunteering, whether it's in the UK or abroad, if you can do that as well, that will be even better to gain, again, as much experience as possible. And the really important thing is making connections and talking to people, talking to different companies, gaining all the experience that you can get that will put you ahead in the game. And yeah, that was a very quick introduction, a very quick presentation about my job and what I do as an engineer. And I will be more than happy to answer any questions. Thank you.
Thank you very much for that, Sotira. What we'll do now, like you said, we will go to some questions which have already been coming in already. So we've had some good questions coming through from Rainham 3 already. I think that's class 3. I hope it is. Let me know if it is or not. So the first one is, what was the first thing you designed?
The first thing I designed, right. So I remember the first building I worked on when I joined the company was a residential development. So it was a student halls of accommodation. And it was a concrete frame building, and it was really fascinating because I was slightly concerned when I started working that because it was the first time I ever worked in a company. So the great thing was that they put me in a project straight away. I had a mentor that explained to me the different stages and the different calculations that I would need to do. It was really fascinating being part of a team straight after when I finished my studies and get to be an important team member in the team. So it was really fascinating.
So this one is from Vakas. He's saying, how did you feel when you designed your first building?
How did I feel? I was thrilled, absolutely thrilled. As I mentioned earlier, it's really fascinating designing something on paper, doing your structural model, doing your calculations, and then seeing this project become a reality is really the best feeling in the world. And also when you walk in town and seeing that building, it's really fascinating. it's the best feeling in the world.
Yeah, I bet it's incredibly exciting and just,
It
yeah,
is
like you
really.
said, overjoyed with it. So Raiden 3 also asking, what have you designed that you are most proud of?
What have I designed that I'm most proud of? So all the buildings that I worked on and I designed, I'm really, really proud of. But I would probably say that one of the first buildings that I designed, and it's the project that I took to site for construction, and it's actually the project that I was showing on the screen earlier. It's a big exhibition hall in Farnborough. It's used for the Farnborough Air Show, basically. And because it was one of the biggest buildings I ever designed, I was really thrilled to have designed that. It was really interesting going to site and seeing the project being built and then later on being completed. So it was really fascinating for me.
I bet it was a bit of a surreal moment as it was being built as well, wasn't it?
Absolutely, absolutely. Also the feeling of because you work as part of a design team and you think that, well, you see a project out in the city, in the town, and you don't really consider that when you first start working in engineering, or if you don't work in engineering, you don't really appreciate that someone has worked on it and someone designed it. So thinking about, yeah, I have designed this, it's really exciting.
A really interesting question here from Sarah. Now you've gone on about things that you've designed and built, but she's asking, have you ever built anything that's kind of failed or not gone the way that you thought it would?
Okay, so I wouldn't say that I've ever designed something that failed, which is a good thing, I guess. But because you also, when you design a building, you will consider the different loads that are subjected on the structure, and these loads you get them from specific design guides, which are called Eurocodes. So these are all conservative values that you will design a building to. And we also apply what we call partial factors of safety. So we never design a building to its absolute limit. We always leave some room to allow for the different types of materials, and also we don't want to design the building to 100% utilization. We always design it a bit less to make sure that we have room for improvement, to make sure that we covered every situation.
So Jonathan's asking, what has been your favorite design so far? I
My
think you've said
favorite
what you've been
design.
proud of before, but yeah, what's your favorite one, do you think?
My favorite one. Well, as I mentioned earlier, every building is completely different. So in my 5-6 years that I've been working as an engineer, I have designed exhibition halls, industrial buildings, education, buildings at the university, houses. So every different project has its own exciting aspect to it, and also the fact that you work with different people as well. No project is the same as the one before, so every different project has something exciting to think about. So I can't really distinguish between the projects I worked on. I think they're all exciting.
So we've got another one from Raymond 5 here. So what made you decide to become a structural engineer?
Okay, so what made me decide to become a structural engineer? So when I was in school, I was studying the different modules that I was studying in school, and specifically the modules that I enjoyed mostly were mathematics and physics. So I was considering what to study later on and what to do in my career. And I knew that I enjoyed math and physics, but I didn't really know what I wanted to do. So I have two uncles. One is an architect, and the other one is a quantity surveyor. So they explained to me what they do in their day-to-day job, and they took me to site. I saw a building which was drawn on paper on a drawing, and then becoming a reality. And this really fascinated me. So in the end, I definitely knew that I wanted to become a structural engineer, and that's why I followed this career.
So you talked about being a structural engineer, but Majid's asking, have you ever experienced any other types of engineering, such as technical or electrical engineering?
Okay, so I've always worked as a structural engineer. I've never worked as an electrical or mechanical, but in my day-to-day job, I always work with mechanical engineers and electrical engineers. So the great thing about engineering in general and the built environment is that you get to understand how the other disciplines work and how you incorporate them in your own designs. So even though I'm not qualified to work as an electrical or mechanical engineer, I will say that I have a general understanding, because all these designs will need to be incorporated into one coordinated design at the end of the day. So it's really important to understand and have a wide understanding about the different types that exist.
So one from Jonathan here. So what influenced you to become an engineer, or maybe who influenced you to become an engineer?
Okay, so as I mentioned earlier, it was my family that influenced me. So my uncle, who is an architect, and my other uncle, who is a quantity surveyor, those are the people that were the first influences, I would say, that explained to me the different opportunities within the profession. And that's why I think it's really important to when you decide what you want to become in the future, to talk with lots of people and get lots of opportunities to understand the different professions that exist, because people will tell you from their own perspective what's fascinating about their career, and then you can decide what career is best for you.
Fab, so really inspired there as well. Like you said, by your family, so that's obviously really important to you as well. Rain for Five's asking again. So in your CV, you mentioned about seismic design, and they're asking what is this?
Okay, so seismic design. So in the UK, we don't really get earthquakes, whereas in lots of other countries, especially in the Mediterranean, you get lots of earthquakes. This means basically that the buildings are shaking up once the earthquake hits. So when we design a building, what I mentioned earlier is that we design the buildings for the vertical loads and also the horizontal loads. So a typical building in the UK will be subjected mostly to a wind load that will hit the building. Whereas in an earthquake zone, a seismic zone, you will need to design the building to withstand earthquakes as well. So that's where we design the different structural elements to be strong enough and to be flexible enough when an earthquake hits, so that the building doesn't fail and doesn't deflect excessively.
A really important part, I think, of structure, isn't it, Sotira?
Absolutely.
Obviously, we're doing these interviews in coalition or in relation to the International Women in Engineering Day, which was yesterday, but we're kind of doing a week of interviews for this. Is this something that you find really important? And have you seen a kind of increase in female engineering over the last few years?
So I think promoting everyone in the profession is really important. It's really important to show to everyone how fascinating the profession is and how we're all helping towards a better world, better societies. Because at the end of the day, it's us that live in these cities, in these buildings, and we want to make them as best as possible for our benefit. Unfortunately, there's only I think 12% of females in the profession. And I think it's really important for everyone to get an opportunity and see the different opportunities within the profession. Because at the end of the day, different people have different experiences. They come from diverse backgrounds. And we give a different flavor, basically, to the project. So at the end of the day, we work in teams. We never work on our own. We never work solo. We always work in teams, and that's when the best ideas come, when different people with different experiences bring in something to the project. And that's why I think it's very important to promote to everyone what engineering is about.
Yes, I think brilliant thing to promote as well. Khadijah from Rain and Four is also kind of touching on this. So he's ever said, have you ever come up against any kind of sexism in your career or any kind of challenges being a female engineer?
I think in general, first of all, sexism shouldn't be taking place at all. I think because engineering is a male-dominated industry. I always go to meetings. Lots of time I've been to meetings where I've been the only female engineer and probably the only female in the room. I think we should start changing this. As I mentioned earlier, it's really important to have lots of different people in the room that will have different ideas. And also, it's really important for the project at the end of the day So I don't think sexism should be taking place. And at the end of the day, we're all working together for the benefit of the client and for the benefit of the whole community as well.
Yeah, I think that's, like you said, very, very important, and hopefully that will kind of increase even more in the next few years as well.
Hopefully.
Yeah, so we've got one from Raiden5 here again. So they're asking, what do you spend most of your time doing? I'm guessing that's in your kind of day when you're working. I know you went through that a little bit in your presentation. I'd just like to add a little bit to that as well. What else do you do with your time kind of outside of work? Do you have any hobbies that you like, do you enjoy?
Okay, so in terms of what I spent most of my day at work doing, so when I first started as a graduate engineer, I spent most of my day doing lots of structural calculations. That's the first thing that you need to learn to have a very good basis of the technical skills that are required for the job. As the years passed by, and as I was getting more and more involved in projects, I was doing more coordination and communication with my team members and the other engineers and the other consultants as well. So currently, I'm doing a lot more coordination between different disciplines to bring the structural design, the mechanical engineering design, and all the other different designs together to ensure a better product at the end of the day. So as I said, lots of different things. You never do one thing for the whole of your career. You always do lots of different things, and you evolve and become a better professional. So in terms of, that's about my day at work, I guess. But in terms of things outside work, I do a lot of outreach, and I'm involved in lots of different organizations, such as the Women's Engineering Society. I'm leading the STEM network within the company I work for as well. And it's all about trying to do lots of outreach and encourage everyone to join this very fascinating profession, and giving the opportunity to learn more about this profession. And in terms of other hobbies, so I enjoy baking. I do lots of baking, especially now with the current situation at home. Lots of walks out in the park. So yeah.
Yeah, some really interesting things that you do as well. And like you said, are you working at home at the moment? Did you say, Sotira?
Yes, so because my job is mostly office based. Luckily, the company I'm working in provides us with all the necessary equipment, our laptops, our headsets, to allow us to continue our job. And the good thing is that we were quite flexible because now with all the conference calls, and we are able to communicate with colleagues, not in person but virtually. So that's really good.
Brilliant. We've got had lots of questions coming in, so thank you for everyone for sending those in. We'll try and get through a few more. Obviously, we're running out a little bit of time, but we'll try and get through as many as we can. So the next one I have is, how long does it take to get chartered, and what does it involve?
Okay, so chartership. So there are lots of different institutions that you can go to become chartered with. I became chartered with the Institution of Civil Engineers, and there's also the Institution of Structural Engineers. So what chartership involves, you need to have a minimum of 4 years academic experience in the first instance. This is one route. So I will talk to you about the route I followed, and then I will explain to you the other different routes that are possible. So the route that I followed, I went on to study for 4 years, and then I joined the training scheme in the company that I'm working in, which means it's through on-the-job training. So you complete the projects, you learn experience through your job, and then you have to sign off 9 different attributes, which are technical, management, health and safety, sustainability, and you have to illustrate that you're competent and you are able to fulfill these different attributes. And at the end of the day, when you fulfill all these attributes, you see your professional review, which is basically it's an interview. You have an interview with the examiners, and you talk about the projects that you have worked on, and they examine you about your experience to make sure you are professionally qualified to become a chartered engineer. So this is the route that I followed. You can also do a 3-year degree and then join a company and become an incorporated engineer first, which means it's a step before the chartership. And then once you become an incorporated engineer, you can sit your chartership exam. So currently, most of the most traditional route is to go to university and get on the job training and then become a chartered engineer. However, people can also get chartered through lots of years in the industry. So if you've spent, I'm not really sure how many years, but if you've done enough years in the industry, you can also get chartered by proving your experience that way. So yeah, lots of different routes again.
And lots of young engineers who are listening today are thinking of maybe going into the career of engineering. And I think Hussein's asking a good question about this that I'm sure they're thinking about is, do you earn a lot of money and is it a well-paid job?
Okay, so I would say that engineering is a well-paid job. It definitely has a lot of benefits. The company I'm working in and other similar companies provide lots of benefits for their employees. So in terms of economic stability, I guess financial stability, engineering is a good job to have.
So with the competition that we run, the Leaders Award competition, what we ask the children to do is think about a design, think about a problem, and design a solution and design an invention around that. And I know you touched on some of the skills that you need for problem solving in your presentation. But we've got Martin here asking, if you could design anything, what would it be?
If I could design anything, so is that kind of what kind of project I would like to be involved in?
Yes, I think so, yes.
Okay. I think I would really enjoy to design a roller coaster. I think that would be really fascinating and really cool to do. I hope I will get this opportunity at some point in my career to do that.
That sounds incredibly exciting. Would it be a roller coaster over here, or would it be abroad somewhere, do you think?
I think abroad will be more fascinating because that means I'll get to travel abroad and see it being built on site as well. So yeah, I will say abroad.
Fantastic. And we've got here our last question here from Denise. I think it's a really nice question to end on. What tips would you give to people who wanted to become an engineer?
Mm-hmm. So I think my most important tip is to grab all the opportunities that come to you. And if there are no opportunities that come to you, go and find them yourself. So as I mentioned earlier, don't expect to, first of all, I remember when I was applying for jobs, I did so many applications. So don't get disheartened if you don't get positive responses. You have to keep trying. Get as much experience as possible. If you can do a few work placements in the summer or during school time as well, grab all the opportunities, speak to people, and yeah, learn as much as possible because that will give you a head start in your career as well.
I just want to say a big thank you to you, Sotira, for answering all those questions today and sharing your presentation with us. It's been amazing and I hope you've enjoyed it.
Well, thank you very much for having me, Alex, and thank you very much everyone for listening and for asking great questions. And yeah, all the best in your future and hope it goes well.
Yeah, like Sotira said there, really big thank you for all those questions that have been coming in and everyone who's been listening and joining us today. And we've also got some other interviews coming up today at 1:30 and 3:30 if you want to join us for those as well. I've attached an online survey into the chat if you want to complete that for us as well. And I hope you've been inspired to take on our Leaders Award competition and start designing some of your own inventions and use our resources on our website at leadersaward.com. So I think we'll end it there. Bye, everybody.
Thank you. Bye.